Hey everyone, so I'm just gonna check the audio first, so just give it a few seconds. Hey everyone, so I'm just gonna check. Alright, that's good stuff. Alright, so today I'm gonna talk about climate change. There's this article I talks about the attitude towards climate change in Australia, so I thought it would be interesting to cover. I'm just gonna wait a few minutes for people to join in the chat. It's a great way to ask questions. Don't feel embarrassed if you don't really know much about the subject. That's why I give an outlet to people to ask questions. So on the YouTube you have a live chat there, and I'm keeping an eye on it. So feel free to say hi or ask any questions. Just gonna wait a minute and then I'm gonna start. Oh, yeah, this thing. Okay, alright, so why don't I start? I'm just gonna very quickly check here that the images are in the right place. Should be good enough. Yep, looks like it. Okay, alright. I'll start with this one. Okay, good. Alright, so 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, and welcome to Age of Reason. My name is JC. Today is episode 68. I'm going to talk about the attitude towards climate change in Australia. So I think like in America, people will say, it's Australia, so I'm going to switch off already. But actually, the statistics I'm going to show today are very similar in the States, and it's also a generational problem, and I will explain why that is. So first of all, I found an interesting fairy tale in Russia, and I thought it would be interesting to share. There's always wisdom in them. So anyway, the translation here, it says that people always believe in some kind of miracle, and they wait for this, event to happen. But this event does not happen by itself. It's not magic, okay? There's I know religious people think and believe in miracles, etc. There's no such thing. So yes, my boy. Okay, I'm just gonna restart that because I should have probably read the whole thing first. Okay, so right. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, good. Live TV, folks. Alright, so I found this Russian fairy tale. It's written by Yevgeny Permyak, who was a great storyteller in his days. And the translation here basically says that the people always wait for some kind of miracle, some kind of liberation, But that freedom does never come by itself. It never happens in any country. And then the second quote here, it says, when people understand the truth, usually in a great tragedy, then sometimes, and the key word is sometimes here, sometimes their eyes open up to the problems. But usually that's what happens when you have a mass hunger or like poverty and something that you cannot correct anymore. So there is like the Unemployment, by the way, which unemployment in the States has skyrocketed since COVID-19 began, so mass hunger, or the worst, war. And then everybody starts to understand why and how this tragedy happens. So it requires some kind of trigger for people to act. I was talking about that yesterday. So the COVID-19 thing, for example, like people can't see it. Climate change, people can't see it. And I think most people behave in this very kind of primal state. If I can see something, then I will believe it. So forget the data, forget the analysis, etc. It's just I trust my eyes. My eyes are the only reliable source of, confirmation, and that's just a very weird way to live your life. But today's article: Australia has a problem with climate change denial. The message just isn't getting through. Guardian. Oh yes, this is from the Guardian. Guardian Australia, another report on the issue with the seriousness it deserves, but it's not enough to preach to the converted. And I know that. Look, my show, when I talk about climate change, I obviously talk to people who are somewhat in the ballpark. There is really, I don't think I ever converted anybody who was like a staunch denier and then came over to our side. I really doubt that happened. I'm trying, but it's hard to talk to these people. An international survey of people's news habits around the world reveals that Australians' opinions on climate change are determined mostly by age and news source, but that overall we are more likely to deny climate change than most other nations. And it is clear from the results of the 2020 Digital Media Report that a major reason for this denial is the influence of News Corp. This report has been pretty eye-opening on the topic of climate change, which confirm long-held beliefs about the impact of the News Corp coverage of the issue. And here they give a graph, so concerns about climate change by country, and Australia is like way, way down there. So in fact, Kenya is the first. So look, just kind of a side story here. When I was, growing up, I had some like issues in my family, okay? So they were saying, well, let's like kind of racist things, okay? So basically the whole of Africa was considered bad. So don't be like Africa. That was kind of the motto at the time. Don't be like those poor Africans in Africa. So yeah, in that kind of bubble, it would be very embarrassing then to be behind Kenya. Okay, but anyway, you have a lot of countries here, like Japan is down here as well. I always say that Japanese people, man, you have like the tourist brochures of Japan, and it looks clean, and the people are hardworking and always busy, and this is all bull. I mean, Japan is first of all not clean. If you want clean, then go to Taipei, Taiwan. That was clean, major city, but I couldn't find any dirt in it. The beaches in Japan are disgusting too, some of them anyway, plastic, etc. And the people themselves, look, yes, of course, some people are kind of put your head down and work kind of people, but there's a lot of assholes here as well, okay? So obviously you're not going to find that in the brochures, and once again. So like, Finland is down here, and USA is even more behind than Australia. So the article today applies to the States as well. Of the 40 countries that take part of the survey, which is coordinated by the Reuters Institute and Study of Journalism, University of Oxford, only the US, Sweden, and Norway have a higher percentage of news consumers who believe that climate change is either not serious at all or they don't know if it's serious. So again, the disengaged, the people who don't really care and who don't know anything about the topic. Oh, okay, so actually this is the same graph, but this graph is sorted by extremely on very serious. So, this is how, like USA, for example, doesn't take it seriously at all. And then this graph is basically the opposite. It's people who think it's not serious at all and don't know. And then Australia is at the top. And at the top, actually, you have the USA. No surprise there. USA is full of crazy people right now. Like the religious people, they're batshit insane. I mean, seriously, and they challenge all the norms that we have in the country that should move it forward, but doesn't, but don't. Just one, just one, just over 1 in 5 news consumers in Australia regard climate change as either very serious, not serious at all, or don't know. Given that the report was conducted during the recent horrific bushfire season, the result is rather stunning and depressing. So I talked about that before. The horrible fires that we had in Australia that killed over 1 billion animals. Yeah, mass apathy, man. Don't care. My house didn't burn, so who cares? So then there's another graph here, and this is concerned about climate change by online news brands. So which news organization does the best job at covering the issue? Well, for example, CNN is actually over here. Let's say it's like in the middle of this graph. Only 77% is extreme, like they consider extremely serious. So basically 1/4 of the time CNN thinks it's not serious at all. You have the New York Times here, and the Guardian is actually way up there. So I cover a lot of Guardian articles. They do a good job on climate issues. Vice News is up there, and The Conversation is the top one. And CNN, by the way, always politicized themselves as the most reliable news network in the world. So yeah, no, they're not. Okay, so now this graph shows the concerns about climate change by generation. So as I said, this is a generational issue. People react to it differently depending on their age. And sometimes it's like logical, but it's also at the same time a bit selfish. I'll explain why. So for example, if you look at the like really old people, 74 years or older, they only think that climate change is 20% serious. So they say not serious at all, not very serious. So this is about somewhat serious. All of that is like over 50%, man. And this is why, because old people have different priorities. For them, the main priority is to stay alive. So how they do that, well, there's many ways to do that, but they will vote for their best interests. Even if it screws other people, it doesn't matter. That's why I said it becomes a very kind of selfish thing as well. They just self-preservation instead of thinking a little bit forward about the next generation, etc. A lot of these people have grandchildren probably, and I really don't understand how you can be a good grandfather or grandmother and really not kind of take care of the issues of today. So anyway, there's that. Baby boomers are better, but this is in Australia, remember, so I don't know what it is in the States. And as you move forward in time, the younger people, so Gen Z, about 50% of the people think it's very serious, it's going to affect us, and this is because we know more about it, and it is going to affect us. It is affecting us right now. We see it everywhere. The evidence, the human footprint is everywhere. As a card-carrying member of Gen X, it's rather shaming to find that barely half of us thinks that climate change is either very or extremely serious, given unlike our baby boomer parents, our formative years saw increasing temperatures. That's true. Percentage of your life with annual temperatures above the 20th century average. So when you start in the 50s there, and it's like still kind of manageable, in the 60s it started to go up in the mid 60s, and the 70s, and then basically since the 80s you're at the top of the chart all the time. It stays flat because it's at 100% over the annual temperatures of the 20th century average. But it's not just age. Political orientation is also a determinant. Those who call themselves right-wing are much more likely to deny climate change, and this is the exact same situation in the States. I talked about that on the previous show, so please refer to my previous shows because I already talked about this and I don't want to repeat myself too often. So, right-wing, only 17% think it's extremely serious. In the States, it's the same thing. And most of them are in here. So not serious at all, not very serious, and somewhat serious. This is well over 50% here, okay? And then left-wing, so over 60% think it's, happening, etc. So that's good. But remember that the scientific consensus is 97%, or actually over that. I already talked about that too. So Even 60% is very, very far from 97%. There's a lot of work to do on both sides. But while this may not be surprising given their news sources and the statements by right-wing politicians, what is more worrying is that just as many as those who call themselves as center view climate change as merely somewhat serious, as do right-wingers. This suggests a large gulf in the ability of the media to convert the issue's importance to those with little political affiliation. When it comes to climate change, believing it is only somewhat serious essentially means you have not understood the problem. This is absolutely true. And it is clear that the media is not getting the message through. Only 38% of those with a center political orientation believe the media provides accurate information on climate change. News media performance on providing accurate information about climate change by political orientation. So again, left wing, you basically have the same graph once again. We need to be a bit careful with these findings because while right-wingers are more likely to deny climate change, they are also more likely to believe the media is not telling the truth. And this is absolutely the same case in the USA, okay? So it is unclear whether those in the center believe the media is exaggerating or underplaying the issue. I don't know about that. But while it is easy to lay the blame at the feet of News Corp and those media organizations and journalists who choose to treat climate change as a debatable concept, it's really not, or possibly a less serious than one, the report also points to challenge for those of us in the media who agree with the science. Over a quarter of those who regard the issue as somewhat serious are disinterested in reading about climate change. Inattention to climate change news by concerns about climate change. So yeah, these people here, so that means that basically a quarter are not even interested in reading about climate change at all. So the people who are like extremely serious, like me, we read articles and we try to stay in the loop as much as possible because science is always moving and evolving and we have to stay on top of it. So I'm definitely like, with the 95% here. This is the challenge for organizations such as Guardian Australia, the ABC, and the 9 Fairfax papers who do report on the issue and with the seriousness it deserves. It is not enough to preach to the converted. We need to reach those vaguely aware of the issue, but not really informed well enough to understand its seriousness. Failure to do so will cede the issue to climate change denying media outlets and will continue to have Australia with one of the highest numbers in deniers in the world. And this is so true. So again, the graphs I showed today, you find almost the same picture in the States. You can find these stats from the Yale connections, by the way, so if you're very interested. Or you can watch my previous shows where I covered that already. So yeah, the fight against the media, when CNN goes out there and they say we're the most trusted network in the world, and that's just like not true. And that gives then the chance for Trump to go out there and say, fake news, CNN is fake news. And in 25% of the cases, he's kind of right, and it lands with people, and that's the problem. And then they continue to kind of idolize him, like the cult of Trump that he really created. So, and it's not just him, of course. In Australia, there is this Pentecostal leader in charge right now. Obviously, he believes in a lot of Christian nonsense as well. His head is pumped full of this bullshit. So yeah, and then again, people listen to him instead of listening to the science. And I always say, look, listen to the science, and then you can be skeptical, but don't just say, oh, I doubt everything, and then that's it, like pat on your back and I'm done. No, you be skeptical, but research the issues. We can probably agree that 1 + 1 = 2, right? So there's no point really to believing that 1 + 1 equals something other than 2, unless you provided convincing evidence of the contrary. All right, so anyway, that's it for today's show. I hope you found it interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Just gonna wait a few minutes for people to drop any questions. If you have any questions, then feel free to drop by in the YouTube live chat, say hi, or just ask questions. It's always a complicated topic, so a lot of people don't really know much about it. So this is a good chance to to do a Q&A. Okay, guys, so I'm going to stop it here since there are no questions. So again, I hope you found it interesting and informative. There's always a lot of information to digest in my shows, I know, but that's the way it goes. You can't convey complicated information in a tweet. A lot of people like these days have this crazy idea that, hey, I get my news from Twitter, and they're very proud of that. And Twitter, all it is basically because it's so short. Basically, it's just headlines. So you read the headlines, and it's all built around reactions. So you read a headline, and it makes you angry, so you like react to it. And I'm like, this is really not the way that a normal conversation goes. You cannot convey a complicated message in a tweet. And people end up thinking that way. People end up thinking in 140 characters, or how long it is in Twitter, I don't know, and that's it. They're unable to think beyond that these days, and I just find it very worrying. Okay, so that's it, guys. So I'll see you on